You're listening to The Bounding Box, where we talk about web development, geo development, and everything in between. All right, so welcome to The Bounding Box. So today I am joined by none other than Sarah Bell. So Sarah, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do and everything.
Right. Well, hi Renee. Thanks for having me. I enjoy your podcast. My name is Sarah Bell. I'm a cartographer and a data viz designer. And at Esri, I am a lead product engineer for a product called ArcGIS Maps for Adobe.
That's awesome. Then sometimes I get some people ask me, like, well, what do the product engineers like do on projects? I've talked to a few, and every now and then I mention to someone like, yeah, this product engineer works on this or that, but people always ask me, well, what do they actually do? So give some insight in what like the product engineer does on the team.
Well, on our team, we have a really wonderful, talented, small group of people. So we all kind of share the responsibility of product engineer in one way or another. Um, but you know, we have to, let's see, we're somewhat in the scope of Esri products, we're kind of new. So there's a lot of product testing and also a lot of like going out to other cartographers and map makers and seeing what they would want to put in the product and, pursuing those avenues, researching all of that. So yeah, what do I do as a product engineer? A lot of the stuff I do is actually, since I am a cartographer, I get to make maps with the product itself,
Yeah,
um,
make sure
which
it does
is,
what you expect it to do, right? Like,
yeah. Or even just get lost in map making and then discover what works really well with our product and what sort of tools we maybe don't need anymore or that we want to add. Just trying to get the right product for our users.
awesome. So how did you get into maps, right? I mean, that's I guess kind of question that we all kind of get asked is like, because it's such a niche field, I guess. But I'm always curious how people get into it.
Yeah, I am always curious too, because it's it's not it's not one of those careers that people like when they're a little kid say, I want to grow up and be a cartographer. I mean, maybe that happens more today than when I was a kid. But I think that a lot of cartographers fall into the role when they are curious about the world enough to see their, their nerdy subject matter on a map. And if that map hasn't been made, maybe they'll be making it themselves. I I wanted to be a park ranger. I wanted to work in the national park forever. So I became a park ranger. And at that park, there were a lot of scientists using GIS. And park rangers are usually seasonal positions. So, but these scientists were there year round. So that's how I stumbled into the idea of, I didn't even know what GIS was at first. And then they explained to me, bear biologists understanding, where bears are at certain times of the year, glaciologists understanding glacial recession because of climate change or what have you. And so I went in to study GIS and immediately fell in love with just GeoViz overall, the whole umbrella of it. And so I'm not a park ranger anymore now. I'm a cartographer.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, that's a great. I mean, park ranger sounds like one of those things that would just be really amazing to do, right? Get out in the open, work in the field. Yeah, that just sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, I enjoyed my field work in school, like the little bit that I got to do. So I can imagine getting to do that for like work wise would be really awesome.
Yeah, totally. It was fun and you know, seasonal is not sustainable for everybody. So
And I think one of the cool bits when you work as in cartography and making maps and stuff is you get to work with people in a lot of different industries, right? Like you mentioned, um, people that work in the parks or oceanographers or people do all these different types of maps. I mean, everyone's trying to tell a story somehow. And I mean, I'm always amazed what some of the maps that come out of people doing real cartography work because I do not do cartography work. I'm a very poor cartographer, but I can get some stuff done with the help of others. So I'm always amazed by seeing what everyone else is making, especially some of the stuff you put out there. You got some really cool
uh,
maps and stuff that have been put together and stuff.
thanks, Renee. That's really nice of you to say. I guess I want to. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'll just say in general, I hear a lot of people who are participating in this thing called map making that say they're not a real cartographer. And I I kind of in the most like encouraging and loving way want to push back on that because we're all participating in the same goal of making a map that's successful. Um, and I think what cartography has become in in the minds of a lot of people is this like sort of beautification of the map and that part of that might be partially true, but I think that um, mapping in general is such a it's a responsibility to get it right. And that's not just on the cartographer's shoulders. That's on, the devs, the analysis, data collection, and, you know, data, all of that stuff that like we're told in grad school is like the not fun part of cartography, data cleanup. That's very important to people like me who consume that data in order to like put it in a digestible format for the world to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I say, it's always like I'm good enough at putting like something together to get the data on there or now analyze it stuff like that. But then I always kind of struggle with, well, does this look good? Like I get what I'm trying to do, but I actually want to make it like sparkle a bit or something, or just kind of add a little flair to it. And we have a lot of tooling and stuff nowadays to make that easier to do. So I kind of get a little carried away here and there. A few years ago, when I first joined Esri, my first year, I was on stage for Planetary Dev Summit, and Vector Tiles just came out, and I did custom vector tile Laker map. So it's giant walls of like orange and purple, like maps were up on the screens and I'm presenting and stuff like that. I loved it, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, it was so blinding." I was like, I don't care, it's fun. Like it's a branded map. It's awesome. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, good for you. Like that's another thing is people put out maps that either they love as the cartographer or their client really wanted. And it's all that sort of beautiful side of cartography. It is like they say in the eye of the beholder, right?
So I got a question. So I haven't used the Adobe Map stuff yet. I'm curious in how all that works because like I know for years, especially going to like UC and seeing all the really cool paper maps that were up and stuff that people, when they ask, how do you do that? Because I can't do that in ArcMap for something like, oh, I export that out to Illustrator, all the different layers, and I do all this really cool stuff. And I was like, wow, that's cool. That's really neat. Like I never got around to really doing it, but I'm curious how the Adobe Map stuff kind of like works and how that makes making maps like maybe easier for designers, right? Like people that aren't naturally map
Right.
makers getting started with that.
Yeah, totally. Well, ArcGIS Maps for Adobe is a plugin for Illustrator. So it's something that you can either make a map entirely in Illustrator, which exactly how you're saying, graphic designers are familiar with something like Adobe Illustrator. So they don't have to learn a whole entire GIS tool. They just are working in a system that they love and know and are familiar with. But we also, if you are on the ArcGIS system and you want to create a map in Pro, you can export it now as an AIX file and then open it in Illustrator with Maps for Adobe. And you can actually continually add more data to that map, more map layers in the graphic design world to your map in Illustrator with this plugin, um, ArcGIS Maps for Adobe. And yeah, so we do see a lot of our users as maybe not the traditional GIS person, or even not, they wouldn't maybe consider themselves a cartographer, but they have a need to make a map. So we see an increasing amount of users like that using our tool. Exactly how you're saying. Yeah,
It's
I
pretty
don't know if
neat.
that answered your question.
I've seen a couple of the map stuff that you tweeted out, like retweeted stuff from people, and people are doing some things like, wow, if as someone that makes maps, I wouldn't think to make a map like that. Like they come up with these really cool creative designs and stuff that I think are really neat. And I think it's great getting those into the space. So people look at that as inspiration for their future maps, something to work on. I think it's just really
Right.
cool. All that collaboration stuff that's going on with all that. I think that's just a really neat way to get things out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you used the word collaboration. It's very much that because ArcGIS Pro has become this wonderful tool that you can like visualize and do amazing cartography in. But we've also find that there's a lot of organizations that have a GIS team and a graphic design team. And so if they're putting things like reports out there or posters or whatever related to whatever their organization is focused on, the Maps for Adobe, as we call it, the nickname for it, it's a wonderful collaboration tool because you can either share your layers out on your ArcGIS Online account or Enterprise, and your graphic designer can consume those layers directly in Illustrator. So they don't even have to learn ArcGIS Online, the graphic designers, or they can export an AIX, and then that graphic designer can open it as well. So again, it's like you mentioned vector tiles. You you could your designer or your GIS uh, analyst could design the vector tiles that fits your company's brand, for example, and you can consume those vector tiles in Illustrator. Illustrator is a vector editing graphic design program, so it's become this like wonderful, efficient tool for exactly what you're saying. Either like the minimalist sort of graphic design like type of map that becomes like I don't know, you might see it on a t-shirt or I've been like experimenting with designing beer can maps,
That's cool.
which they can't be too complicated because it's on a little can. Um, or they can be super complicated like I don't know, something like a topo map.
You need to get some beer cozies out there. That would definitely be something that you could get out.
Yes, yes. That would be funny.
Now you also make fonts. You have a couple of fonts out there that people can grab now, right? There's the was it the Bell Topo font, which I think was the first one I've seen, and you have another one that looked really cool. That's got like these really large capital letters. I can't remember what the name of it is though.
Yes, it's called High Alpine.
That's it.
Because the capitals are super high and the X height is high as well. You can also, so I created, oh yeah, yes, I did. I made some fonts. It's super nerdy because it's incredibly tedious. Um, yeah, anybody can go get Bell Topo Sans for free if they want to. One of my favorite cartographers just used it on his map for the Washington State DNR
Oh,
because Mount St. Helens just had its 42nd explosion anniversary, and he did this wonderful LiDAR oblique map of Mount St. Helens, and part of his fonts was Bell Topo Sound, so that was an honor.
how do you get started to make a font? Were you just sitting there one day going, "Well, I'm not too happy with the fonts I have available. I want to try this."
Yes, that's exactly what happened. Um, I a few years ago, a lot of, I mean, it still happens, but like cartographers were trying to recreate sort of a late 1800s, early 1900s USGS topo era map. And there's this one typeface, I guess, lettering that's on there that I could not find anything exactly like it. Um, and in each map, it varies a little because I don't know, because of the era, nothing was super, I don't know, controlled in the font world, I guess. I don't know. But so I just made one and
Oh wow.
I put it out there. And um, it's on ArcGIS Online now. You can, it's
Is it
one of the
really?
typefaces you can
Oh
choose,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
which is, yeah, which is like mind blowing. To think of as a grad student, I would never imagine that I would make a font and that it would be on ArcGIS Online.
I guess that's interesting. Yeah, I used to work with a lot of old maps before, and I worked at a public agency, and like you get some of these old paper, like well, not paper, they're copies of paper maps, but everything is done by hand. So some of it's really interesting. Like I don't know if you would call them fonts, but the text that they would use, you can't find them anywhere. They're just whoever was working on the map decided that's what they were going to use, and that was their style, and that was it. So
Right.
yeah, it's really cool to come up with something like that. I like that a lot. Now, what do you is that like you use Illustrator to create all the ligatures, I suppose, and then compile them together?
Yes. So I used, there's another plugin for Illustrator called Font Maker. Yeah, it's called Font Maker.
Wow.
And I didn't take any classes on it, so I can attest to it being very user friendly. But you just create the shapes in Illustrator and then sort of drag it over to.
Yeah, that is
Oh
super
wait, I think
cool.
it's called Font Self. I'm sorry. I actually can tell you. font self maker. There, that's
Font
what it's called.
self maker. Okay,
Yes.
awesome. So, I saw that you presented at the North American Cartographic Information Society last year, I think it was, right? Are you presenting anywhere else coming up?
Um, I go to NACIS, as you said, at the North American Cartographic Information Site every year. It's a
Wow, okay.
wonderful. It's absolutely the best place, I think, for cartographers. It's a great place to meet fellow cartographer friends, and like they become fast friends because you share the same nerddom. Um, I will be presenting at Esri UC in July. Um,
Wow, okay.
I will share the stage with none other than Ken Field. Looking forward to that. And then I'll probably be at NACIS again in October.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
That's
now that
cool.
society's kind of reopening, I'm
Yeah.
attending things like that in person now.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. I want to be mindful of your time, Sarah. Thank you for being here. But I do want to ask before we go if you have any tips for anybody listening, whether they are cartographers or developers or something, for them to take away.
Ooh, that is a big question. Well, I do know, having listened to your podcast, that you are have a lot of probably a lot of dev listeners. Um, And so I want to speak to everyone with the same tip because I don't know. I don't have any like specific dev tips to give a developer. I'm in no business to say that. But I guess I just want to reiterate that we are all participating in this thing called map making, and it's a conversation, and a responsibility. So yeah, everybody everybody's playing a part in the map. Um, Even though like I may never meet the data collector or the developer that created, the plugin that I'm or the library that I'm using. I guess it's just this responsibility. We all share it. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate your time, and I'll be talking to you later.
All right. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Boundary Box today. Please subscribe for more content.